That's where Ali got his courage from. He watched Jack Johnson documentaries. He said, I'm nothing compared to Jack Johnson. Listen. In 1908, you got lynched for looking at white women, reckless eyeballing. He married 3 of them.
Wow.
I don't put myself in the league of Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson's fighting in the ring, and there's 75,000 people saying, I'm going to kill you if you hurt him. You know, this is what they're saying. This is what they're saying in the
while he's trying to
he's
fight.
Fighting, and know what he's doing? Oh, and he's beating the guy, boom, boom, boom. Oh, he's so beautiful. I'm gonna send him to you real nice. Boom, boom. And he's talking to the guy's wife, how you doing, Miss Jeffries? And then boom, 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 beat the guy there. And if you ever watch him fight.
Do you think Jack Johnson could have out-talked you in the ring? How would that have been?
Me and us and him together?
Yeah, he'd probably say, you got a big mouth. You got a big mouth. You talk too damn much. I'm gonna kick you behind tonight. I probably says, I'm the greatest fighter of all times. I'm too pretty, sucker. You don't stand a chance tonight. If you think you can get me, come on. Just keep talking all that stuff. Keep talking. I'm gonna soon get you in a few minutes. Come on, sucker. I don't care if you take 20 years, you'll never get me. I'm the greatest of all times. I'm greater than you, and I'm prettier than you. Look how ugly you are. You slick head shining. Look at you're too ugly. You're ugly nothing, sucker. When I'm through with you, you're gonna be uglier than me. I'm sorry, you crazy. What you mean?
In the early years of the 20th century, boxing was governed as much by silence as by rules. Certain men were allowed to rise, certain victories were meant to be accepted, and certain fighters, no matter how skilled, were never supposed to stand at the center of the heavyweight division. The sport had an order, and that order was protected fiercely. Jack Johnson did not fit into that order. He did not wait for approval, and he did not disguise his confidence. From the moment he emerged, Johnson carried himself like a champion who already knew the ending. He fought without haste, smiled under pressure, and controlled opponents in ways that unsettled both crowds and commentators. His presence alone challenged what boxing thought it understood about dominance.
Wow. Who were standouts for you outside of the stand? Like, obviously Jack Johnson.
Yeah, he was awesome too. He was just amazing. He was ahead of his time fighting. There's
Way
also
ahead of his
little
time.
guys like Tony Canzoneri, Henry Armstrong, Barney Ross, guys like that, Benny Leonard. These guys are just, they evolved boxing to the level where it can evolve to now. They were superstars in their time.
Who was that crazy middleweight who went up to fight Jack Johnson and dropped him?
Stanley Ketchel.
That's right.
He's a
That motherfucker
badass.
could punch.
Yeah, he's a badass. Then he got killed.
Yeah, and he was still famous back then.
Wow, look at him putting it all together. That's so cool.
Isn't that cool? So they built this outdoor stadium to watch Jack Johnson beat the fuck out of Jim Jeffries.
Oh,
That's how it goes. Jim Jeffries was trying to make a comeback. He was a little bit older. Back then, bro, boxing would go until someone died.
But what truly made Johnson dangerous was not only his mastery in the ring, it was the way he refused to shrink outside of it. In a time when caution was expected and invisibility was survival, Johnson chose visibility. He lived openly, confidently, and without apology, forcing the sport and the country around it to confront a reality they were not prepared to accept.
In terms of the prejudices,
they say I'm controversial. They say that I'm bold, but I wasn't nothing like Jack Johnson. You must remember now, this is a black man. Think about how we were treated here. They had lynchings and rapings and burnings, and every time he'd fight, they lynched Negroes and burn houses. And that's history. This man was told, if you beat this white man, we're going to shoot you from the audience. He said, well, just shoot my black so-and-so because I'm going to knock him out.
Did you know that Jack Johnson was born in 1878 in Galveston, Texas? Jack Johnson was the first African American to win the World Heavyweight Championship. In 1908, Johnson challenged Canadian Tommy Burns for the World Heavyweight Championship.
Jack Johnson did not merely win fights, he forced boxing to reckon with him, and in doing so, he became something far more unsettling than a champion. He became the boldest man the sport had ever seen.
Jack Johnson was a big inspiration because of what he did out of the ring. He was so bold. Jack Johnson was a black man back when white people lynched Negroes on weekends, every weekend. Back in 1909. They would send him letters saying, you fighting a white man, and nigger, if you knock him out, we'll kill you. He said, just kill my black buggers, I'm gonna knock this white man cold. And he would knock the white man out, and he was bad. Back in 1909, man. I know I'm bad, but he was crazy.
When fighters of later generations spoke about Jack Johnson, they rarely began with power. They talked about distance first, about how he seemed to stand just out of reach, never where an opponent wanted him to be. Men who had spent their lives inside the ring recognized something immediately. This was not strength-chasing victory. This was control, deciding when victory would arrive.
Just as Jack Johnson had chased Tommy Burns around the world to get a shot at him in Australia, nobody knows that Sam Langford chased Johnson around the world for a shot. And when he finally cornered Johnson, Johnson's answer, drawing the color line, was, "Sam, nobody wants to watch two black men fight for the heavyweight championship."
I think Langford was one of the greatest fighters we ever had, Ed, and if I'd have fought him, I probably would have got knocked out, and I'm glad I never had the opportunity.
Johnson fought at a pace that unsettled boxers who were raised on aggression. While others rushed forward, he waited. While they swung with urgency, he studied. His defense was not passive, and it was not cautious. It was deliberate. He leaned back, slipped punches by inches, and answered only when the moment belonged entirely to him. To those who understood boxing at its deepest level, this was mastery. He was not reacting to fights. He was conducting them.
Washington came out against him. The leader in the head, really, of the black voice of the time, because it was an era, real quickly, of reform. They were banning drinking, and it gained enough credence to become what? Prohibition. They banned betting on horses.
I'm not scared of nothing. I'm like Jack Johnson was. He's a black man and lived in the day when Negroes couldn't look at white women. He married white women, although I don't agree with that, but just show you how bold he was. He married white women, whooped white men, told the Ku Klux Klan to shoot me. They told Jack Johnson, if you knock this white man out, we're gonna shoot you in the ring. And everybody was scared. Way back when there wasn't no Muslims or no Black Panthers. He was a bad black man. See, so I'm like Jack Johnson. I'm crazy. I don't care.
Opponents later described the same sensation. No matter how hard they tried to impose themselves, Johnson seemed calm, almost amused. The pressure never reached him. Instead, it returned to them, heavier each round. That psychological weight mattered as much as any punch. By the middle rounds, many fighters realized they were not just losing exchanges. They were being dismantled slowly, forced to confront their own impatience. Long after his reign ended, the echoes remained. Heavyweights who followed spoke of Johnson as the first to show that dominance did not have to be loud, that a champion could win by refusing to hurry, by refusing to panic, by refusing to give an opponent the fight he wanted. His style opened a door that later fighters would walk through with greater safety, but none with the same risk.
The average person during World War II, the average man, or not World War II, the Civil War, the average man was like 130 pounds. There's no food. There were no giants back then. It was really difficult. When a guy like Jack Johnson came along, everybody was like, what the fuck? Because he was a legit heavyweight. But they called him, they called him a giant. And, what was he, like 6'2"?
I think
Jack Johnson was 6'2". Yeah. That's what I think. I don't think people were big back then. I think it was a totally different world.
We started with Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion, who was admired by the white man for his skill, but reviled for being black.
For his time, he was a defensive genius. Because everybody back then, those times, would just make the fist and just take the punches, let's just move away. When he would just catch them in the air. Because back then they only do 2, 3 punches, and they could anticipate them, watch them catch them in the air. And back then it was a big time.
What made Johnson different was not simply that he fought this way, it was when he chose to do it. At a time when defiance carried consequences far beyond the ring, he stood relaxed under pressure and unashamed of his superiority. Fighters who came after him understood what that took. They did not call it arrogance, they called it nerve. In that sense, Jack Johnson became more than a champion. He became a reference point. A standard whispered in gyms and dressing rooms whenever someone spoke of composure, confidence, and control. Not everyone could fight like him, but everyone who understood boxing knew exactly what he represented.
If you think sports are just games, think again. Meet Jack Johnson, the boxer who defied the odds. Born in 1878, Jack Johnson rose from poverty to become the first African-American heavyweight champion of the world. But his story is more than just about boxing. In a time of rampant racism, Johnson's victories in the ring were defiant acts against a segregated society. He was flashy, unapologetic, and unafraid to live life on his own terms. But success came with a price. Johnson faced relentless persecution, legal battles, and even imprisonment.
By the end of 1908, the truth was already uncomfortable. Everyone who followed boxing knew who deserved the heavyweight crown. The problem was not skill, it was permission. In the United States, doors stayed closed. So, the moment had to happen far from home, on the other side of the world, where distance made denial easier and consequences felt safely removed.
You were telling me in the world that I could have easily beat Jack Johnson? So easily that it would be embarrassing. He only looked outstanding in those days, and he was really outstanding relative to his opponent, because his opponents knew so little. Let me show you some of the things that Johnson had done to his opponent, which made him look so superior. I will take the position of one of his opponents, namely Jim Flint. Put out your left hand, hold it against my head. Well, what's this? I'm Jim Flint, and you're Jack Johnson. This is what he did. You mean Jim Flint just stayed and they try to push him like this? Oh, man.
On December 26 in Sydney, Australia, Jack Johnson finally stepped into a ring where the title could no longer hide. Across from him stood Tommy Burns, the reigning heavyweight champion, smaller in stature but carrying the authority of a belt Johnson had chased for years. From the opening rounds, the imbalance was impossible to miss. Johnson did not rush. He did not swing wildly. He studied, waited, and took control as if time itself belonged to him. Round after round, the pattern repeated. Burns attacked. Johnson answered calmly. The champion moved forward. Johnson leaned back, countered, and smiled. It was not a brawl. It was a lesson delivered slowly, almost deliberately, in front of a crowd that began to understand they were witnessing something boxing had never fully allowed itself to see.
Organized decent fights for him. Even to just start a boxing career, black boxers had to go through the millstones of one of the most humiliating and brutal breeds of Jim Crow times. It was called a battle royal. The fighters, most often teenagers, 5 to 10 of them were herded into the ring, gloves on, and a command was given. If this pile of mollusks doesn't sound very humane to you, here's another detail. In most cases, the fighters were blindfolded. Just imagine, 10 people in the ring, blindfolded.
By the later rounds, the fight had stopped being competitive. Burns absorbed punishment that felt less like resistance and more like survival. Johnson knocked him down again and again, not with desperation, but with certainty. When police finally stepped into the ring in the 14th round to stop the bout, the decision felt less like an intervention and more like an admission.
The world heavyweight champion Jack Johnson fought the middleweight champion named Stanley Ketchel. There was a huge size difference, but Jack knew he'd make money with Stanley. The lead up, Stanley would wear like platform shoes, recoats over each other. Now the plan was box, go to a decision.
Or fight sparring match.
Yeah, but then for some reason, Stanley Ketchel decides to throw a real right hand, drops him. Jack Johnson gets up, lines up Stanley for the most perfect right hand. He knocks Stanley out so hard. You see Jack Johnson scraping Stanley's teeth off of his glove.
There was no controversy left, no argument to hide behind. A black man had not only won the heavyweight championship of the world, he had done so with ease, control, and unmistakable authority. Boxing had crossed a line it could never uncross. From that moment on, Jack Johnson was no longer just a challenger who had been denied. He was a champion the world would be forced to respond to, whether it wanted to or not.
I think one of the most uniquely American stories that you've told is the story of Jack Johnson.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's interesting because one of the great themes in American history is race. I mean, it's obvious because we were founded on the ideal that all men are created equal, and the guy who wrote that sentence owned hundreds of human beings and didn't see fit in his lifetime to free them. But you also have individuality. And what is, with Jack Johnson, like a good boxing match, you have a black man who also just wants to be a man, wants to be fully himself. Now, the society doesn't really want him to do that, and they're going to put lots of constraints.
When discussions about Jack Johnson drifted toward opinion, the facts always pulled them back. In an era when records were kept imperfectly and boxing was still finding its structure, a few numbers remained impossible to argue with. They were not impressive because they were large. They mattered because of what they represented. Jack Johnson became heavyweight champion of the world on December 26, 1908, in Sydney, Australia. He held that title until 1915, 7 years at the top of the heavyweight division, at a time when champions were hunted relentlessly and politics often decided who was allowed to fight, was not an accident, it was sustained control. During his reign, Johnson defeated every credible challenger placed in front of him. The most telling victories were not close decisions or narrow escapes. Against Tommy Burns, the reigning champion, Johnson dominated so completely that authorities stopped the bout in the 14th round. Against James J. Jeffries, the former undefeated champion brought back specifically to defeat him, Johnson knocked him out in the 15th round on July 4, 1910. That fight was billed as the answer to Johnson's existence. Instead, it ended the argument. Johnson's official record lists 66 wins, 46 by knockout, against 11 losses, 10 draws, and 1 no contest across 76 recorded bouts. Even historians who caution about early 20th century record-keeping agree on one thing. No heavyweight of that era combined longevity, consistency, and control in quite the same way. These numbers do not tell a story of reckless aggression. They describe patience. They describe dominance stretched over time, not seized in moments. They confirm what fighters already understood when they spoke about Jack Johnson. His greatness was not theoretical. It was documented, measured, and sustained under pressure few champions ever faced. Every era decides what it is willing to tolerate. Jack Johnson discovered, slowly, and then all at once, that his era was not willing to tolerate him. The same confidence that unsettled opponents inside the ring became an offense outside of it. Victory did not bring safety. It brought scrutiny. After Johnson claimed the heavyweight crown, the response was immediate and relentless. Newspapers openly searched for someone who could remove him, branding the effort with a phrase that revealed more than it intended. The pressure was no longer about boxing alone. It became political, social, and deeply personal. When Johnson defeated James J. Jeffries on July 4, 1910, the backlash spilled beyond the sport. Riots broke out across American cities. Films of the fight were banned. The image of a dominant black champion was treated as something dangerous. The consequences followed Johnson wherever he went. His lifestyle, his relationships, his refusal to hide any part of himself were no longer seen as personal choices. They were treated as provocations. In 1913, federal authorities charged him under the Mann Act, a law rarely applied to men of his standing until then. Convicted the following year, Johnson chose exile over immediate imprisonment, leaving the country while still capable of competing at the highest level. Years passed away from home. The title slipped away. The moment that should have defined his prime became fragmented by distance and uncertainty. By the time Johnson returned to the United States to serve his sentence, the sport had moved on, and the window that once stood open was closed. This was the price of boldness, not defeat in the ring, but isolation from the world he had mastered. Jack Johnson remained unbroken, but he was made an example. His story became a warning as much as a legacy, reminding every fighter who followed that courage, when shown too openly, always demands something in return. Time has a way of softening what once felt dangerous. The noise fades, the outrage quiets. What remains is the shape of the truth. Jack Johnson did not leave behind a perfect story, but he left behind something far rarer. He left a standard. Long after the belts changed hands and the crowds moved on, fighters continued to study him, not to imitate his defiance outside the ring, but to understand his control within it, his patience, his composure, his refusal to fight on anyone else's terms. Those lessons survived even when his name was spoken carefully, or not at all. Johnson showed that greatness did not have to beg for acceptance, that a champion could stand unbent under pressure and still command the ring. He forced boxing to confront its limits, and in doing so, expanded them for those who followed. Others would walk through the space he opened with less resistance, often without realizing who had paid the cost. Today, Jack Johnson is remembered not only as a champion, but as a turning point. A man who dared to live as boldly as he fought, at a time when both carried consequences. Boxing has never fully returned to what it was before him, and perhaps that is the clearest measure of his legacy. Some men win titles, others change the shape of the sport forever.